gloomy. Always looking for something to play with. And chasing fireflies.
This is a horrific world. I'd tell you to make the best of it, but then I'd be lying. There's no way to make it better.
If only those human boys would have let him play with them. He'd promised not to eat them. He'd told them as much. But I guess all they saw was a crazed zombie. The day one buries a child is the day one stops believing. It's when I accepted all hope was lost. Though Gloomy loved the night, he missed the warmth of the sun on his skin. Although I knew better, as I covered him with dirt, I imagined he had found peace. But he came back. Of course, he came back. The sun had grown tired of the idiocy of humans. He'd left, to never rise again. Instead, zombies rose from their graves. Gloomy was lost, forever in limbo. For the dead cannot die, nor truly live. You may not know this, but the living see their own monstrosity mirrored in the dead. That's why they fear them. If there was one thing Gloomy knew, it was that grown-ups were stupid. Dead or alive. which he thought was always great fun. About the sheer force of his dead muscles, the rage that would sometimes overtake him. He was dangerous. When zombies first roamed these lands, the humans fled to their cities. United in enclaves, joined forces and shared their resources. They felt safe and didn't want to go back. For a moment, I saw the beauty of humankind again, and I was hopeful. But then the priest called his citizens to arms, and they changed their minds. They wanted their land back, and the zombies gone. The memory of those first zombies rising from their graves still terrified most. Like tiny rays of sunlight, those fireflies led him where he needed to be. Gloomy didn't care where that was, as long as they played with him. Nena, she was different. I'd known that since the day she arrived. She was investigating the son's disappearance. She wanted to find him. And I thought she was right to try, at least. Fireflies. They'd come to find her. She was so excited. She thought fireflies looked like little flying stars. And the sun was a star, wasn't it? The boy, he was the first child to come back from the dead. So maybe these little fire stars could take her to the sun, and she could ask him to come back. or there would be no escape. All grown-ups kept their children locked inside. How she loathed being stuck within these old walls. A game of marbles was all Nena was allowed. All her uncle cared about was catching zombies. He called himself the priest, loved playing humanity's savior. In truth, he would be its undoing. The sun is hiding, with no plans to ever rise again. You can stop looking. She really wanted the sun back. She would love to play outside with the sunlight on her face. She was going to find the sun. Nena was about to embark on an adventure that could change the course of all our lives. But what do my thoughts matter to anyone? I'm just a gravekeeper. Nena was grateful for the moon because the darkness frightened her. Here in the garden, the zombies were harmless. Locked away by her uncle, trapped in the blazing light. She knew about the zombie boy. Gloomy. Her uncle claimed that he'd swallowed the sun whole.
When you see that boy, tell him I'm still here. That child may be our only hope.
They said his eyes shone a sulphurous yellow. But Nena pictured those eyes shining like the sun himself. According to her uncle, the zombies had declared war on the humans. What other response was there but to fight back, he said. He was their priest, their commander-in-chief. Humanity's last hope, he said. I've always found that hard to believe. These woods were very dark indeed. The black bare branches of the trees and the wet old leaves covering the ground made a perfect veil for groping hands and bared teeth. Many had lost loved ones to the zombies, Nena too, but she wasn't sure that war was the answer. Maybe this wasn't such a good idea after all. The old school. Gloomy knew it well. The toys lying around held the promise of joy. But he'd forgotten how to play with them. He had tried throwing them, but that wasn't nearly as satisfying as hurling bricks and bones. Nena thought of the school as a magical place where children came to play, before the dark cold cloaked the world. Tonight, it wasn't the broken toys that called to Gloomy. There was something else. Why did she come here? Nena wasn't sure anymore. Because the magic she thought she'd find here, it wasn't real. drew her in. She could feel it.
What they say is never true. It's best if you figure it out for yourselves.
There were no answers to be found here. She knew that now. Once upon a time, children were free to play. One would almost forget. There are other stories I could tell about those days, but this is the one people need to hear. These children didn't know they would rattle the world. Fell to pieces. How I wished someone would have disposed of that priest. I would have buried him gladly, because this was all wrong. She had lost him. It was too dark in these dense woods. That boy couldn't be more different from her. And that's exactly why she needed to get to him.
quite something, isn't it? This is the life that can grow without the idiocy of humans.
She had not expected him. When she had looked into those golden eyes, she'd felt the magic she'd been looking for. She'd never seen a tree this tall, nor such luminescence in the plants and flowers climbing up its trunk. The life that tree harbored was unheard of. This was Gloomy's home. How often had he climbed these vines? She found herself daydreaming about climbing trees with him. That looked a lot like the sun, and Nena marveled. Did Gloomy make this? There she was, the human girl. Because she liked his drawing of the sun, he wanted to share its secret with her. He pointed at the yellow light piercing through the trees from beyond the forest. They were going to go find the sun, together. They said zombies were man's enemy. They had no idea what they were talking about. Now that Gloomy was with her, Nena wasn't scared anymore. With him, she was safe from the other zombies. What did the cultists want with an amusement park? Nena had thought that this lush forest might bring some relief to the humans' daily agony. And she had considered running home to tell them about it. But she soon realized that they already knew about the woods.
these are really the only place left holding life in this otherwise dead world.
The cultists were cutting down trees to accommodate their camps and craft zombie traps. They were destroying these woods. What the humans had told her was all she knew. Their every word turned out to be a lie. Nena understood that her own people were a threat to Gloomy, that they could take him from her. The thought terrified her. Entirely focused on danger coming from outside the camp, the cultists forgot to look within. If they had, they might have seen her. The only way to the light was straight through hell. They didn't hesitate. The old mines. The sight of it chilled Nena's blood. And mine, whenever I think of it. They had to be smart about this. There was only one way forward. She needed his strength. He needed her wits. I'm glad they understood that. She needed to get her bearings. They must have taken a wrong turn. Priest needed fireflies. He was hatching new and evil plans. That much was clear. It had been his choice to go find the sun with Nena, a human. Maybe he should have stuck with his own kind after all. None of it was easy, but she would see this through. All that kid wanted was to stay with her. How to be when the cultists raised the alarms. The children knew they'd been found out. Maybe I should have intervened, but I just didn't know how. I could see it too. The glow of light across the water, beckoning. It had to be the sun. There's a softness to the breeze sweeping across these sands, which I appreciate very much in these times of disaster. They were so close. All they needed to do was get across this lake. This was their moment. This was their beach. They were each other's secret. Finding the sun was the only way Gloomy could ever stay with Nena. Under no circumstances would the priest allow his niece to befriend a zombie. Sunlight. If the sun agreed to come back, she could save so many people. Someone else had taken note of nature's evolution and the emergence of bioluminescence. I wish they'd voiced their concerns back then. Good things don't last. The priest found them again, with his floodlights covering the entire lake. There was no way to get to the sun. In awe, the children gazed at the wonders of this carnival fair. This looked unbelievably more fun than the school. The fireflies. They weren't supposed to be trapped in those cages. It felt all wrong. Nena was just going to have to do something about that. That's when Nena understood that she'd never be alone again. No matter what, Gloomy would always come back for her. And she would never abandon him. In appreciation, the fireflies lit up the scene. In their natural light, Gloomy could safely enjoy the fair too. Children must have come to play here all the time. Gloomy and Nena couldn't resist and wanted to see everything. She wanted boundless lights. This fair was the first place to close down.
This is what joy feels like, children. Relish it. It won't last.
The fireflies would help her, if she asked them nicely. Light up the sky, sweeties. That's what she whispered to them. These two children were finally, truly having a good time. The air rang with their laughter. Something I hadn't heard in a long while. He had never been scared in his life, or in death. And he wasn't about to start now in front of Nena. A sudden unease settled in the pit of her stomach. More fireflies trapped in a cage. Nena couldn't understand why. Gloomy couldn't help but notice the amount of cages stacked around this place. It was clear someone was catching zombies. I think we all knew who that was. The children must have suspected him too. machine that would steal the fire of other living beings heralds the final ending. Whatever we are given is taken away just as easily. You'd do us all a great service if you remembered that. The joy of the carnival long buried underneath these horrors. They wanted to be gone from this place as fast as possible. They held onto that little something and focused on the road to the sun. What a thing to believe in a dream. What more harm did they plan to inflict on others? This is when things started to fall apart. When they took away Nena, Gloomy broke down. Blazing rage clouded his mind again. Nothing would stop him. done with those children yet. Not in the least bit. This is not a man who shows compassion. He was just laying the groundwork for his final blow. Felt like the world had stopped turning. I will never forget Nena's face when she saw the light in his eyes die. I buried this boy twice. This time I took him far away into the mountains. And though I hated doing exactly what that monster of a priest wanted, I did it regardless. Because I wanted Gloomy to truly find peace this time. Nena had a mind of her own. Her uncle had confined her to her room again. But no locks could keep her from finding Gloomy. She could not ignore the hole in her chest where his light used to be. She had promised him she'd protect him. One thing that she had learned from all her tears. She was still here for him. Like he had always been there for her. No matter how thick the snow, how brutal the wind, she would find her friend again. Who needs humans in their lives? They're all the same anyway. This would not be the end of their dreams. She wanted to run, but not without him. Like a fierce beacon, once again, the fireflies led the way. They wouldn't rest. This would not be the end of their dreams. She wanted to run, but not without him. Like a fierce beacon, once again, the fireflies led the way. They wouldn't rest. Not until the boy and the girl with the golden eyes were reunited. Not until she had found his grave and started digging the frozen earth with her bare hands. Not until she felt the soft fabric from his sweater and started yanking at it frantically. She needed him beside her, not in the cold ground. When Gloomy opened his eyes again and climbed out of the grave, she couldn't stop crying with relief. If only those fools had left those children alone, we all could have seen a better tomorrow. With the snowstorm clearing the path down the mountain again, the children set off. Herself staring at Gloomy sometimes, convincing herself that this was real, that she had really found him again, even if she couldn't be completely sure he was the same as before. But when she felt the light from his eyes drift over her, she knew her friend was just as affected as she was. She reminded herself that she hadn't been the one trapped in a coffin in the ground. Faint light broke through the frozen surface, and though it was only a sliver of what it used to be, It reached for them. The priest again. He had tracked down the fireflies seeking the light of the sun. He caged them all, reducing them to a power source. Fireflies had a strange effect on the sun, who sparkled a little more with every little ball of fire returning to him. When his eyes locked on her, she knew she was done for. But Gloomy let the rage take over. For Nena, he would do it 1,000 times. blinded by fury, his only focus was the annihilation of the zombie child. Gloomy knew he would never leave them be, but he would never stop fighting for the human girl. The sun finally rose again. He stared in wonder at these two mesmerizing creatures that carried his light in their hearts. We could have followed in their footsteps, but we didn't. The world welcomed the magnificent sunset for the last time. I stayed until there was no one left to bury but me.